Guys, the impossible literally just happened at MetLife Stadium. Just when you thought you had the 2026 World Cup group stages all figured out, boom, we get a match that completely shatters expectations. Germany took an incredibly early lead, and honestly, everyone watching thought the floodgates had opened. But what followed? An absolute masterclass in resilience that shook the football world to its core.
Ecuador scored two massive goals. And to truly wrap your head around how crazy this is, you got to remember, this is an Ecuadorian squad that hadn't scored a single goal in their previous two matches. Literally zero. They lost 1-0 to Ivory Coast, drew 0-0 against Curaçao. They looked completely blunt in attack.
And they pulled this off against Germany, holding them to just a single goal. I mean, we're talking about the German powerhouse here, right? The heavy tournament favorites who came into this matchup having just demolished Curaçao 7-1 and beaten Ivory Coast 2-1. They looked like an absolutely unstoppable offensive machine.
Okay, let's dive into this, because we are looking at the ultimate David versus Goliath narrative playing out right in front of us on the world's biggest stage. A team that couldn't find the back of the net to save their lives, going toe-to-toe with an 11-match winning juggernaut. So, the big question we're answering in today's explainer is, how exactly did a team with 0 tournament goals eliminate the mighty Germany? We're going to break down the whole shebang, the chaotic tactical shifts, the massive VAR drama, and those clutch substitutions that delivered the biggest shock of the tournament so far. All right, part 1, 0 goals versus the tournament favorites. The sheer contrast between these two before kickoff was just staggering. You've got Germany sitting pretty at the top, already qualified, with 9 goals under their belt. Sure, coach Julian Nagelsmann rotated his squad a bit, but he's still fielding superstars like Leroy Sané, Florian Wirtz, Kai Havertz, and Joshua Kimmich. Then, you look over at Ecuador. 0 goals. Total desperation mode. Coach Sebastian Becachese knew his guys had a massive mountain to climb. It was a must-win, so he made some huge calls, like handing a start to a 22-year-old winger while still leaning on his 38-year-old captain, Enner Valencia, who was out there making a record 9th World Cup appearance.
Which brings us to part 2. Early chaos and VAR drama. Things kicked off with a bang. In literally the second minute, Florian Wirtz slides a ball over to Leroy Sané for a completely ruthless finish. It was actually Germany's earliest World Cup goal since 1934. But man, Ecuador was furious, and rightly so. Alexander Pavlovich pretty clearly caught Pedro Weitze with a high boot in the build-up. The ref completely missed it, played on, and the goal stood. But here's the thing. Instead of folding, that sense of injustice totally lit a fire under Ecuador. Just 7 minutes later, in the 9th minute, Felix Nemcha loses the ball, and that 22-year-old Sunderland winger we mentioned, Nilson Angulo, on his very first World Cup start, by the way, drills this brilliant low shot past Manuel Neuer from 20 yards out to equalize.
The atmosphere was just electric. To quote the Match of the Day commentary, if this place had a roof, it would have gone. MetLife Stadium was absolutely packed, mostly with Ecuadorian fans, and when that kid beat Neuer from distance to breathe life into their tournament, the stadium just erupted into this crazy sea of celebrating yellow jerseys. But hold on, because the drama was far from over. Right after halftime, Germany really dialed up the pressure. Less than 30 seconds into the second half, disaster seemingly strikes for Ecuador. Joel Ordonez upends Arsenal striker Kai Havertz right inside the box. The referee points straight to the spot. It looks like Germany is just going to cruise right back into the lead.
But wait, VAR steps in, and honestly, this brilliantly illustrates how crucial the technology has become, because VAR spots that Leroy Sané actually committed a foul on Pedro Vite during the build-up, way before the penalty incident. The spot kick gets totally overturned. You could practically hear a massive collective sigh of relief from Ecuador, just a total lifeline keeping them in the game.
Moving to part 3, Plata's match-winning moment. As the clock ticked down, a draw just wasn't going to cut it for Ecuador. They needed a win, and this is where we get an absolute tactical masterclass from Becachese. In the 64th minute, he makes the incredibly bold decision to pull his 38-year-old legendary captain, Enner Valencia, off the pitch. In his place, he brings on Kevin Rodriguez, this towering 6'3" striker. It's a massive gamble, right? Benching your most experienced player when your tournament life is literally on the line. But fast forward to the 77th minute, Ecuador wins a corner, and guess who leaps the highest? The sub, Kevin Rodriguez, rising up to flick the ball dangerously toward the goal. The 77th minute. The ball is just hovering right there in front of the German net.
Time seemed to stand completely still for a split second. And Gonzalo Plata just stabs it home. Ecuador takes the lead. MetLife Stadium turned into an absolute explosion of yellow. I mean, waves of Ecuadorian fans were literally in tears out there in New York. The entire bench emptied. Becachese is sprinting onto the pitch amidst roars and hugs. Manuel Neuer is just hanging his head in total disbelief, while Nagelsmann furiously paces the touchline. Just like that, Germany's 11-match winning streak was shattered.
Of course, Germany wasn't going to go down without a fight. The ref added 7 agonizing minutes of stoppage time. Sane gets a glorious chance but shoots tamely, and Dennis Undav hits the side netting. But the real story of those dying minutes was Ecuador's heroic defending, specifically Pablo Vit. He made an astonishing 9 tackles in this match. That's the most by any Ecuadorian player on record at a World Cup since 1966. They were defending with every ounce of their hearts out there.
Finally, part 4, the historic fallout and records.
So the real crucial takeaway here is understanding how Germany got it so wrong. Joshua Kimmich summed it up with this pretty somber reflection. We weren't as direct in our play, and we didn't create as many chances. Even with all their possession and that super early goal, they just lacked that ruthless edge that Ecuador found when their backs were against the wall.
And that gives us these two wildly contrasting destinies. On one side, you've got this new golden generation for Ecuador, guys like Angulo, Plata, and Vite, advancing out of the group stage for only the second time in their entire history. Now they're setting up a massive round of 32 clash against England. On the flip side, utter humiliation for Germany, eliminated. This is their second group stage exit in just 3 World Cups, repeating their total disaster from Russia in 2018. It's becoming a really embarrassing, recurring pattern for a nation with such a rich footballing pedigree.
So here's how the dust finally settled in Group E. Germany and Ivory Coast both finished top with 6 points. But Ecuador, rising from the ashes of those first 2 goalless matches, squeezes through into the knockouts with those 4 precious points, leaving Curaçao at the very bottom. What a phenomenal David versus Goliath story. But, it leaves us with one massive question. Is this the single biggest upset we're going to see at the 2026 World Cup? Or is there even more magic waiting just around the corner? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed this explainer, make sure to subscribe, because our next one is diving into Ivory Coast's historic 2-0 victory over Curaçao, featuring Nicolas Pepe's brilliant brace. You definitely won't want to miss it. Until next time, keep learning.